Today, we're here to talk about a disturbing question which has an equally disturbing answer. We're going to talk about the secrets of domestic abuse. When it comes to domestic abuse, the question that everyone always asks is, why does she stay? Why does she want to be with a man who beats her? Well, today I am here to tell you a story about a crazy love, a psychological trap disguised as love. One that millions of women and men fall into each year. It can even be your story. So, I have two things to say. My first message is that domestic violence can happen to everyone, regardless of class, religion, ethnicity, financial, or educational classes. It's everywhere. Secondly, I want to address the fact that most people think that domestic violence is a woman's issue. Not really. 85% of abusers are men. And this form of abuse always happens in an intimate, interdependent, and long-term relationship. In other words, in families. The last place where one would expect any form of violence. This is the reason why domestic violence can be so confusing. So back to the story. Girl meets boy. They chat, laugh, and fall in love. They get married. Boy adores girl, girl adores boy. Everything seems smooth, right? No. The funny thing is that there was never a hint of violence and control or anger in the boy at the beginning. The girl didn't know that the first stage in any domestic violence relationship is to seduce and charm the victim. She also didn't know the second step is to isolate the victim. The boy did not come home one day and announce, hey, all this Romeo and Juliet stuff has been great, but I need to move into the next phase where I isolate you and I abuse you. So I need to get you out of this apartment where the neighbors can hear you scream, and out of this city where you have friends and family and co-workers who can see the bruises. No. Instead, boy comes home one Friday evening and tells her that he quit his job that day. His dream job. He says that he quit his job because of her, because she had made him feel so safe and loved that he didn't need to prove himself at his dream job anymore. And that he also just wants to get out of the city and away from his abusive, dysfunctional family and to move to a tiny town somewhere where he could start his life over with her by his side. The last thing the girl wants is to leave the city and her dream job. But she thought that you make sacrifices for your soulmate, and so she agrees and quits her job, and they leave the city together. The girl had no idea that she was falling into a crazy love, into a carefully laid physical, financial, and psychological trap. The next step in the domestic violence pattern is to introduce the threat of violence and see how she reacts. So as soon as they move into this small town where he was supposed to feel safe, he buys 3 guns. He keeps one in the glove compartment of their car. He keeps one under the pillows on their bed, and the third one he keeps in his pocket at all times. He says that he needs these guns because of the trauma he had experienced as a young boy. He needs them to feel protected. But those guns were really a message for her. Her life was already in grave danger every minute of every day. He first physically attacks her at 7 a.m. She was still on her nightgown. She was working on her computer trying to finish a project, and she got frustrated. He uses her anger as an excuse to put both of his hands around her neck and to squeeze so tightly that she couldn't breathe or scream. And he used the chokehold to slam her head repeatedly against the wall. 5 days later, the 10 bruises on her neck had just faded. He was really sorry. He had just been stressed out. It was an isolated incident and he was never gonna hurt her again. But did he really? Absolutely not. One day, she was driving and she gets lost. So he punches her on the side of her head so hard that the other side of her head repeatedly hits the driver's side window. He proceeds to beat her once or twice a week for the next 2.5 years of their marriage. So back to my question. Why did she stay? The answer is easy. She didn't know that he was abusing her. Even though he held those loaded guns to her head, pushed her down the stairs, threatened to kill the dog, pulled the key out of the car ignition as she drove down the highway, poured coffee grinds on her head, she never once thought of herself as a battered wife. Instead, she was a strong woman in love with a deeply troubled man, and she was the only person on earth who could help him face his demons. Right now, maybe you're thinking, wow, this is fascinating, or wow, how stupid is she? But this whole time, I was actually talking about you. I can promise you that there are several people who are watching this right now, are currently being abused, or have been abused as a child, or who are abusers themselves. Abuse can be happening to your children, or your sister, or even your best friend right now. Abuse thrives only in silence, and you have the power to end domestic violence by breaking your silence.